Hello, seniors. Before I begin, I'd like to thank you for allowing me the pleasure of addressing your class today. My name is Stephanie Long, and I am in my senior year at Colorado Technical University. I'm seeking a Bachelor of Science degree in Information Systems Management. Dr. Ernie Youngster, my professor of Enterprise Architecture at CTU, has challenged me to share my newfound knowledge of the presentation tier architecture that I've learned in his class with each of you today. I can already sense a few feelings of, oh brother, what a bore. But I promise you, what I'm about to share with you plays a big part in your everyday living. You just didn't know it. First, let me explain a little about architecture. Architecture expresses the characteristics, forms, behavior, and relationships among a family of things. Most of you probably relate to the architecture of a building, its size and shape and function. You understand that depending on whether it is a school building or a home, the architecture plays an extremely critical part for each of them. Did you ever think that architecture plays an extremely critical part in information systems? Well, it does. When a system architect designs the information systems for an enterprise or a company, they must consider how the data is stored, how it's retrieved and transported, viewed and manipulated, and by whom? Who's the user? If design and architecture aren't carefully considered, the system will fail in its purpose. A system must be usable. Our discussion today centers around how you, the user, and the system interact with each other. It is within the presentation tier that the user and the system connect. A few years ago, the design of presentation was restricted to computers. But today, the ever-evolving world of communications requires manipulation of the presentation tier more frequently. How many of you used your cell phone to access your email today? Don't worry, we won't take your cell phones away. We're not saying here in class. Just asking you how many of you accessed your email. Every one of you. Okay. How many of you downloaded a new music video to your iPod or your MP3 player? Most of you. Every time a new device is capable of communications with a system, the architecture of the presentation tier is affected. When you are wowed by a new device like a 4G phone or an iPad, there is a systems architect that worked through the necessary changes to make that presentation tier work for you. Let's see, for example, the size and shape of a video streaming on your cell phone is very different from the size and shape of the same video viewed on your personal computer, right? If the presentation tier didn't accommodate the difference when you switch devices, you wouldn't be happy. You'd have this little teeny tiny picture on your big computer screen or such a massive picture on your little cell phone that you couldn't even make sense, head nor tails out of it. So you wouldn't be happy, of course not. The system just wouldn't be usable to you. So now you have an idea of how presentation tier architecture is a part of your daily life. Let me go into some detail about the primary and secondary presentation tier components. The primary presentation tier is called the client, and it consists of the software that allows you to communicate with the system. That software is called a user interface. As I said before, technology advancements happen at such a rate that the need exists for many client options. In the interest of time, I will categorize them into three basic groups: internet browsers, fat clients, and mobile devices. I'll bet you didn't know that your Internet Explorer was called a thin client. You simply call it Explorer or Chrome, right? It is referred to as a thin client because the code downloaded to your computer is small in size, so that it is quickly available, and there's little processing done on the client side. That's why you're prompted to update your browser as newer versions are available on the remote server. The most commonly recognized browsers, which you're probably all very familiar with, are Internet Explorer or IE, Mozilla Firefox, and Google Chrome. These are your thin clients. When the software is pre-installed on a physical device, it's referred to as a fat client. As many of you may have guessed, that's due to the larger file size. The fat client makes for a richer user experience and for quicker processing time. When you're able to work offline, that is because the fat client made it possible to do a large amount of work without the need to send and receive from a remote computer. Then you have mobile devices. There are many users interested in mobile access, and the reasons vary from business to just plain fun. Again, there's several groups that come together to provide the technology of mobile access. To name a few, there are the manufacturers of the hardware like Sony, IBM, Macintosh. Then there are the software providers like Microsoft, Oracle, and Apple. And then let's not forget the communication service providers like AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. It is difficult to establish the standards to follow for mobile device user interface. It's challenging because of the small screens, the limited keyboard features, low bandwidth connection, and the small amount of available memory. Another challenge is creating applications needed for high security user interfaces like for banking and transaction processing. Those are becoming increasingly popular and available on most mobile devices. All of these things require a delicate balance within the presentation tier architecture. So far I've been discussing only the primary presentation tier components. What do you suppose defines secondary components? Well, these are the components responsible for preparing the information requested so that it's usable to you, the user. They're controls that guide your user input in order to retrieve the information in a form that's understandable to you. These would include web forms with list boxes for entering your choices, radio buttons, and labels, which are considered generic controls. There are oodles of choices between screen types and custom controls like file sharing, file opening, wizards, shopping carts. You get the picture, right? When you log on to iTunes to purchase your favorite songs and videos, you utilize a number of these user interface components. I'll bet you weren't aware there were so many components involved in moving your favorite tunes and videos to your iPods and cell phones, right? But hold on. There are still other user interface components in the secondary presentation tier called process components. There's application adapter components, resource components, business tier components, and data tier components. Phew! There's a lot going on in that presentation tier, no doubt. By now you can understand that designing the presentation tier is definitely not for lightweights. The multitude of tasks, components, interfaces, and architecture involved in getting the weather report, emailing your latest pictures to your contacts, posting a video to YouTube, or connecting with your friends on Facebook is nothing less than a miracle of technology, and it requires the expertise of a myriad of professionals. When you leave school today, I ask one thing of each of you, that for at least today, when you text a buddy, subscribe to a channel on YouTube, or post your mood on Facebook, that it occurs to you, it was all made usable to you through the presentation tier architecture. Thank you so much for your time. You are now enlightened. Have a great day.